think most of you know today marks the beginning of our look into our third process of how we accomplish the mission that God has given us. Now, the first process is connecting with God, connecting with one another, connecting with our neighbors. The second, we just finished, is grow. We just wrapped that up. We grow in knowledge of God, knowledge of His Word. We grow in responsibility in His kingdom, and we grow in relationship. And the third process, if we had connect and we had grow, what's the third one? Serve. Good. So the third process that we use to know God and to make Him known is service. Now we're going to be digging into various aspects of the topic of service as we move through the Advent season, the Christmas season. But today, as we prepare to gather around the Lord's table, I want to look at what may well be the most important truth for us to learn about serving. True God-honoring service comes from a heart of humility. It comes from a heart of humility. Now, I think there's a fair amount of confusion over what humility actually means. Some people seem to think that humility means hating yourself. It means, putting yourself down. Over the centuries, there have been people who have gone so far as to literally physically harm themselves in an effort to pursue humility and being humble. The Franciscan monks, still today, they will take vows of poverty. Part of that is in order to help them stay humble. But the truth is, none of those kind of humbling acts guarantees humility. The truth is, pride, that's the opposite of humility. Pride can sneak in and attempt even the most degraded and pushed down heart and mind. Poverty and brokenness are not a cure for pride. In fact, you can be utterly destitute and be proud of that. There are those who, rejecting all forms of wealth and things of earthly value, and then their pride is magnified because look what I can do without. So humility is not forcibly lowering or lessening yourself. You've probably heard others say of humility, it's not thinking too much of yourself or thinking too little of yourself. It's what? Not thinking of yourself at all. Now, that kind of fits, but I worry that even that can miss the heart of humility. Because if you are not ever thinking of yourself, do you ever recognize the cost of humility ahead of time? In other words, humility is a sacrifice. So which sacrifice has greater value? The sacrifice that catches you unaware, or the sacrifice that you see coming, that you understand, and that you accept in advance? Which is a greater sacrifice? I would think the second one. I'm not diminishing the one that catches you by surprise, but the one that you willingly in advance look at and accept, I think, is a greater sacrifice. So the fact of the matter is, pride is just so pervasive in our world, and humility is so mercurial, so fleeting. I truly wonder if a simple definition is possible. So rather than try to define humility in words, let's instead define humility as a person. This is probably not a huge surprise to you. Who's going to be our definition of humility? Jesus. So that's where we're going today. We're looking at Jesus as a picture of humility. If you'll open your Bibles to the 20th chapter of Matthew, this is going to be the first place we go this morning. I'll give you a second to turn and or flip and swipe to the 20th chapter of Matthew. That's what they need. They need an app. You can just have it sitting there, and when somebody in the room says Matthew chapter 20, it automatically goes. That would be, yeah. What'd they do? You're right. You'd have to start with that. All right. Matthew 20, starting in verse 20. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Who are the sons of Zebedee? James and John, the sons of thunder. Right? Now, these are two of Jesus' disciples, right? There were three disciples that were really like the closest disciples that followed Jesus around. Peter, James, and John, right? Here are two of them. And their mom comes up to Jesus with her sons, bows down before him, and makes a request of him. And Jesus said, well, what do you wish? She said to him, command that in your kingdom these two sons of mine may sit one on your right and one on your left. Thanks, Mom. Really, I mean, nothing personal, this is totally an aside, but how lame is it to have your mom intercede for you before Jesus? I try to ask you this and it didn't go over so well, Mom. Can you, it worked for him, it worked for you. What?
I gave your mom to a daughter.
It's like that. Wow! You're right. It's like taking your mom to a job interview. But Jesus answered, which this is a verse he probably answers to a lot of us all the time. You do not know what you're asking for. Okay, who got to sit on the right and left side of Jesus when he came in his glory that first time? They were thieves on the crosses, right? I mean, just think about it. You don't know what you're asking. And Mom's like, oh, I want them on your right and your left. And the people on my right and left are getting crucified. Just saying. You don't know what you're asking. And then he asked them, are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink? And they said, oh yeah, we're able. You ever told Jesus, I'm ready for whatever? And when the truth is, he's like, oh, boy. And then he said to them, my cup you shall drink. You asked for it. But to sit on my right and my left is not mine to give, but it is for those who have been prepared by my Father. I love that in Jesus. It's not mine to do. It's in the Father's hands. And this is one of my favorite parts of this. And then after hearing this, the other 10 disciples became indignant. They were peeved. Why were they mad? Well, they wanted to be first. That's right. Are you kidding? You just took an end run around us to get ahead of us with Jesus? Why didn't I think of that? But Jesus, being Jesus, called them to himself and he said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. That doesn't mean that they use their power. It means they're like abusing their power. It is not this way among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your master. Shall be the smartest, fastest, strongest. What's it say? Shall be your servant. Whoever wants to become great among you shall be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man, who's the Son of Man? Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Greatness in the kingdom is found in service. Greatness in God's kingdom is found in service, and service is found in humility. You don't have to turn there, but an example talking about Jesus and his humility from Philippians 2. Paul gives us this command. Have this attitude, have this character in yourself that was in Christ, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as a thing to be grasped. I mean, think about it. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to actually answer this, but just think about over your lifetime, have you ever had those oh, if I were God fantasies? What would I do if I had all power and could do anything and everybody had to obey me? First of all, most of those fantasies that we go over aren't all that good. But even if we had a really good one, still screw it up, right? And here Paul is saying of Jesus, he was God. And yet he didn't feel like he had to grasp onto that. He emptied himself, taking the form of not a human, not a person, taking the form of a bond servant. That is the slave in Jewish culture who is chosen to be a slave. They have asked to stay a slave in your household. And being made in the likeness of men. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient. Obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Humility is at the core of who Jesus is. And Jesus is the model for who we are meant to be. I mean, just think about it. Jesus is God. He is the creator of all. He is eternal. He is one and equal with the Father and the Spirit. And yet, he willfully submitted himself to the Father. Jesus existed before creation. He was the object of worship in a sinless heaven. No pain, no suffering, no evil. And yet, he chose to be born a human being. And he didn't just come to earth as a human. I mean, he could have done that. He could have just skipped all of that growing up stuff. He came as a baby. He came as an infant. He could have skipped all the messiness of having to grow up. But he chose to walk through that. To be like us. He could have come in his glory. And all of humanity would have bowed down before him and acknowledged his deity. But he came veiled. He emptied himself. He set aside his glory. Why? So he could relate with us. So we can approach him. The Bible says to see God face to face is to be toast. That's an old Hebrew word. But in Christ, Jesus himself tells us, we have seen the face of the Father. Time and time again, we see Jesus and his humble commitment to service. We looked at it Thursday with the youth. Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist. You remember that guy? He came before him, was telling everybody he's coming, he's coming. And then when he came, everybody's like, that's it? Including John, frankly. His cousin had been executed. And Jesus had just found out about it. And he's like brokenhearted. He knew it was coming, but it hurt. And he got in the boat with his disciples, like, let's go to the other side of the lake. Jesus wanted to be alone. Jesus wanted some time to grieve for his lost cousin. A man, he said, there's been no one else born of woman greater than him. They get in the boat, they start going over, and the crowds, you remember what the crowds did? Yeah. So he's in the boat, going this way, and they're like, and he gets over to the other side, and there's 10, 15, 20,000 people. The Bible says 5,000 men, not counting women and children. And when he saw them there, what did it say he did? He felt compassion. They were like sheep without a shepherd. Here he is, broken, somebody, family, dear to him, has been brutally murdered. He wants to be alone. But he set that aside and he served. He came to serve, not to be served. Another picture, Palm Sunday. Remember what Palm Sunday is? At the beginning of the Jewish festival there. And this is the third time Jesus comes to Jerusalem during his ministry. And he's coming down and they're all laying palm branches down in their coats. And what is it everybody's yelling? Hosanna! Hosanna! They're like, this is him! This is the Messiah! How did he ride in? Oh, come on. Surely he had like a 20-hand-high white stallion, right? No, he rode on a donkey. A new, young, never been ridden donkey. Why? In fact, he was fulfilling Zechariah 9:9. It says, "Rejoice greatly, daughter of Zion. Shout in triumph," which they did. "Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just. He has salvation. He is humble. And he's riding in mounted on a donkey, even on a colt, the child, the offspring of a donkey." He's humble. Willfully, intentionally humble. I think we see an amazing picture of it right here at this table. The end of that week, the beginning of the week, they're like, "Hosanna, Hosanna." At the end of the week, they're like, "Kill him." There he is on the night he's going to be betrayed. He is the Passover meal. It's in John chapter 13, if you want to turn there. First 17 verses. It says, "Now before the feast of Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come." Now, if you think about it, all these times in the Gospels, over and over and over, he's like, "My time is not come. It's not time yet, not time yet." Over and over and over. And here he is, John chapter 13, and it's like, "My hour has come." That he would depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world. He loved them to the end. Jesus, knowing, I love that John put this in here. This is what Jesus knew. This is what Jesus had in his mind when he's about to institute the Lord's Supper. He's about to go to the cross. Jesus, God, through John, wants us to know what he was thinking. And he was thinking, "My time has come. The Father has given all things into my hand. I have come from God. I'm going back to God." He got up at the supper. He laid aside his garments. He put on a towel. And he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel he was wearing. He came to Simon Peter. And Peter said, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered him, "What I do, you do not understand now, but you will understand later." Peter said, "You shall never wash my feet." Jesus said, "If I do not wash you, you have no part in me." I love Peter. Peter's like, "Okay, well, if that's what it's going to be, forget my feet, wash everything. If it's all or nothing, you got all." But Jesus, he tells them, "You who have been bathed, you who have been clean." He's talking about that washing of the soul and the forgiveness that he's going to be purchasing shortly. If you've been washed, if you've been bathed, all you need to have is your feet cleaned off. The person who's been bathed is completely clean, and you are clean. But not all of you, because he's talking about Judas. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments back and reclined at the table again, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you?" What's the answer? No, he just told Peter, you haven't got a clue. "You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for I am. If I then, your Lord and your teacher, washed your feet, you ought to also wash each other's feet. For I give you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Truly I say to you, the slave is not greater than his master, nor is the one who is sent greater than the one who sends. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." I think most of you know this story. You understand that in the culture of the day, there was no lower, nastier, dirtier job than having to wash nasty, smelly, dirty first-century feet. It was just disgusting. In fact, whose job would it have been to wash feet? Yeah, and not just any slave, but like the lowest slave. Like, if you have a hierarchy in the household, the lowest person above the dogs had the job of washing feet. And literally, the disciples, right before this, had been arguing. Now, in the text, it says they were arguing over who was greater. Now, a lot of times you'll hear people go off, they're talking about the upper end. I'm the greatest. No, I'm the greatest. I think they were arguing over, not who's number 1, they were arguing over who's number 12. Because then up there were the 13 of them, maybe some of the ladies too, I don't know. They were gathered for the Lord's Supper. Now, I guess the ladies couldn't have been there because they would have made one of them do it. You're right. Okay, so it's just the 13 guys sharing the Lord's Supper, and they all know, oh, dang it, we forgot to get a kid to come in here and wash our nasty, stinking feet. Well, I'm not going to do it. They're fighting over who's the greatest. They're fighting over whose job it is to wash nasty, dirty feet. That's why Jesus gets up and goes and washes everybody's feet. They were just fighting over it. In seminary, I had a class, and we were supposed to do a project to show about how to mentor people. And there was supposed to be an actual interactive part that we would do. And everybody had different things that they did to kind of show what it's like to model and to mentor. I took basins and towels and pictures. I'm like, we're going to wash each other's feet. Because, what better example is there? Jesus did it. You want to know how many people were willing to let me wash their feet? No one. Not a one. We got issues with feet, don't we? Still today, we got issues with feet. And we got shoes. It's kind of ironic to me. In fact, we have so many issues with feet, and yet, like, flip-flops are something you wear year-round now. Yes, nothing wrong with that. But if I had brought a whole bunch of stuff up here, we're going to have a foot washing. I bet by the time I was done praying, 2/3 of you would be gone. Ain't nobody touching my nasty feet. Yeah, that's what Jesus did. He washed their feet. Jesus is a picture of serving in and from humility. He was not proud or unwilling to take the lowest place. And I tell you, the lowest place of washing their feet is nothing compared to the lowest place of leaving heaven and living among us. And really, the ultimate example of his humility is the cross. He left heaven, he humbled himself, taking on the form of a human. He humbled himself unto death, even death on the cross. That's our example. That is what humility looks like. Godly humility is submitted to the Father. Godly humility does the dirty job. Godly humility sees the sacrifice ahead, understands and accepts it. That's who God was. That's who Jesus is.